When I first saw the lake glimmering through the pine trees, I thought I'd finally outrun chaos. After 15 years of city noise, cramped apartments, and one brutal divorce, the silence out here felt like medicine. The air was sharp with pine and clean enough to taste. My boots sank into soft earth as I stepped off the moving truck, watching the water ripple like glass touched by the wind. This wasn't just a house, it was a promise. A cabin built by hand decades ago, wrapped in cedar, sitting on 2 acres that kissed the lake's edge. The kind of place my dad used to talk about owning someday, back when someday still felt possible. I ran my hand along the old wooden railing of the dock stretching into the water and thought, this is it. Peace, finally. The realtor had called it a hidden gem with private lake access. I didn't realize then how important those last 3 words would become. Private, lake, access. I unpacked boxes to the rhythm of water lapping against the shore. My dog chasing geese, sunlight flickering through branches like a film reel of calm. Then, from the corner of my eye, movement. 3 figures appeared at the property line, matching clipboards, stiff smiles, and that unmistakable air of official disapproval. One of them, a woman in an immaculate white blouse, pointed at my dock and started marching toward me like she was storming a crime scene. The moving truck hadn't even left the driveway when she shouted the words that would ignite the war. Never saw coming. Sir, you're trespassing on community property. The peace I'd fought years to find ended right there, on the very first day. She didn't knock. She announced. The woman in white stopped halfway up my porch steps, heels sinking slightly into the gravel, but her confidence never wavered. I'm Claudia Whitmore, president of the Lakewood Shores Homeowners Association, she declared like she expected applause. 2 men flanked her, one clutching a camera, the other a folder stuffed with papers. I wiped sawdust from my hands and tried to sound polite. I think you've got the wrong property. I just closed on this place last week. Claudia gave a thin, polite smile, the kind people wear when they're about to ruin your day. Oh, we're well aware. You purchased Lot 47. Unfortunately, you may not have realized that the lake is governed by the HOA, and use of it is strictly limited to members in good standing. Her words hit like cold rain. The lake came with my deed, I said, pulling the folded document from my back pocket. It says private access. She waved it off with a manicured hand. Our legal boundaries supersede outdated property descriptions. The lake is community property, and your dock, she pointed dramatically toward the water, is in violation of multiple aesthetic and environmental codes. The man beside her started taking photos. Click, click, click. Violations? I laughed. Lady, I haven't even finished unpacking. Her eyes hardened. You'll receive a formal notice. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in escalating fines. We take these matters very seriously, Mr. Hayes, I said. Daniel Hayes. Mr. Hayes, she repeated slowly, like it tasted sour. Enjoy your afternoon. It might be your last one on our lake. As she turned to leave, the camera guy leaned close and whispered, You'll learn quick. Nothing happens here without Claudia's approval. Their SUV tires crunched down the gravel road, leaving only the sound of geese and the distant hum of my generator. I stared at the dock she'd just called illegal, the sunlight bouncing off the ripples like a warning flare. Something told me I hadn't bought peace. I'd bought a war with paperwork. By the next morning, I'd memorized every word on my property deed. 3 times. Nowhere did it mention an HOA, no shared rights, no fine print claiming community property, just black and white language. Parcel includes a lakefront access and full shoreline rights. But experience had taught me something. Bullies don't always need truth, just confidence. So I drove into town to find mine. The county records office smelled like coffee, dust, and old air conditioning, government nostalgia. A silver-haired clerk named Doris peered over her glasses as I laid out my deed. I just need to verify lake boundaries, I said. The HOA's telling me it's theirs. She typed with deliberate slowness, the kind that makes suspense feel heavier. After a minute, she turned the monitor toward me. Lakewood Shores HOA formed in 2018, she said. You purchased from the original estate, Registered in 1976. I frowned. So, the HOA didn't even exist when the lake was deeded? Correct, Doris replied, sipping her coffee. Actually, look here. She zoomed in on the map, tapping the screen where blue met green. These docks? All of them extend about 15 feet into your parcel. That's private property, honey. My pulse quickened. So those docks are technically built on your land, she finished, grinning like she'd just watched a plot twist. And if they didn't file permits, that's a code violation. On them. For a second, I just stood there staring at the map like it was buried treasure. The lake everyone called the community jewel? It was mine. The HOA's perfect little waterfront image floated on my property like an accidental invasion. Doris lowered her voice. Word of advice? Don't tell them yet. Let them hang themselves with their own paperwork first. I left the courthouse with a folder full of copies, my heart pounding, not from fear anymore, but from the thrill of knowing something they didn't. Claudia had declared war on my first day. She just didn't realize I already owned the battlefield. It started small. A note taped to my mailbox, written in bold red marker. Remove illegal structure immediately. No signature. No contact info, just hostility wrapped in cheap paper. 2 days later, I woke up to find orange flags staked across my shoreline like someone was planning a demolition. Then came the emails. Anonymous complaints forwarded from the county. Noise violations, unapproved modifications, disrupting community harmony. I hadn't even finished unpacking. The real kicker came that weekend. My neighbor across the cove, a guy named Ron, waved me down while mowing his lawn. Hey, man, he shouted over the engine. You really think the HOA is going to let you steal their lake? I blinked. Their lake? I own this shore, he shrugged. Claudia posted about you in the Facebook group. Says you're refusing to follow community law. People are ticked. By the time I got home, the post was blowing up, my photo taken from the road, captioned, non-compliant homeowner threatening our ecosystem. Hundreds of angry comments. They'd turned me into a villain overnight. The next morning, I found oil slicks near my boat ramp. Someone had dumped motor oil into the water. The smell hit before I saw it, sharp, chemical, deliberate. My dog tracked muddy footprints to the edge of the dock, where cigarette butts floated like evidence. That was the moment it clicked. They weren't just trying to intimidate me. They were trying to ruin my property. So I fought back the only way that didn't end in handcuffs. With proof. I installed security cameras, infrared, motion-triggered, silent. I saved every screenshot, every fake violation letter, every Facebook post. I didn't respond. I let the silence build pressure, because sometimes the best revenge is patience and paperwork. By the time Claudia realized I wasn't breaking, only building a case, it was already too late. She thought she was cornering me, but really, she was backing herself straight into the lake. It was nearly midnight when I finally cracked open the last box my lawyer had mailed over, a bundle of old property documents from the original estate owner. The paper smelled like dust and history. I wasn't expecting much, maybe another outdated map. But then, halfway through a yellowed folder labeled, Water Rights, 1976, I found a sentence that made my pulse stop. Includes full riparian and subaqueous ownership of adjoining water body. Subaqueous ownership. The land. Beneath. The lake. I reread it 3 times, each word sinking deeper than the last. Not only did I own the shoreline, I owned the ground underneath every square foot of that lake. The water was public, sure, but the lake bed, that was mine. And guess what sat on that lake bed? Every single dock the HOA had built. I grabbed my phone and called Doris from the records office. I need you to check something, I said, barely containing my excitement. Does the HOA have individual dock permits? She hummed thoughtfully. They have collective access permits issued under the estate's water rights back when your property was still in trust. Those rights transferred to you. So technically, I said, their docks are on my subaqueous land. Technically, she replied, they're paying nothing to use your underwater property, which makes those docks unpermitted structures. I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering. The HOA hadn't just crossed a boundary, they'd built an entire lifestyle on it. Every morning coffee on those docks, every family fishing trip, every kayak launch. It all relied on my permission. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Claudia thought she held all the cards, but she'd built her kingdom on ground she didn't own, and I was the landlord she never saw coming. The lake she was so desperate to control, it was about to control her. By the time the HOA called an emergency community meeting, I already knew what they were planning, a public ambush. The flyer slipped under my door said it all. Agenda, addressing the threat to Lakewood shores. Apparently, I was the threat. I arrived early. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and nervous energy. Folding chairs scraped against the floor as neighbors shuffled in, whispering. At the front, Claudia stood in her usual power pose, pearls, posture, and pure arrogance. Behind her, a projector flickered to life, showing an image of my dock. This individual, she began, voice smooth as glass, has violated multiple community standards. He's trespassed on HOA property, ignored fines, and jeopardized our lake's ecosystem. We must act before he causes irreversible damage. Polite gasps rippled through the room. I let her talk. Every exaggeration, every lie, until she finally said the words I'd been waiting for. The lake belongs to this community. That's when I stood up. Actually, I said, walking toward the front. It doesn't. All eyes turned to me. Claudia's expression froze mid-sentence. I placed my folder on the podium, flipping it open to the official deed and water rights documents. The county seal glinted under the fluorescent lights. This, I said calmly, is proof that the lake bed and the land beneath every dock you've built belongs to me. A murmur swept through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Another stood up. "Is that true?" I looked at Claudia. "You've been charging families for using docks built on my property, which means legally you've been trespassing and collecting illegal fees." Her voice faltered for the first time. "That's impossible," I smiled. "You're right, Claudia. It's impossible for you to win now." The silence that followed was almost holy. You could feel it ripple through the room, the sound of 50 people realizing their queen had no crown. The county inspector, who'd been quietly sitting in the back, stood up, adjusting his badge. "Mr. Hayes is correct," he announced. "These docks were constructed without valid permits on privately owned lakebed property. You'll all be receiving formal notices within the week." Claudia's face drained of color. "You can't be serious," she stammered. "This lake has been ours for decades." The inspector frowned. "According to county records, ma'am, the lake was never yours." Murmurs turned to shouts. Neighbors who'd once glared at me were now crowding Claudia, demanding answers. "You told us this was HOA land. We paid fees for those docks. What have you been doing with our money?" Claudia's polished composure shattered. "This meeting is adjourned," she barked, grabbing her briefcase like it might shield her from reality, but reality was faster. The next morning, the local paper ran the headline, "Homeowner owns HOA's docks. Residents demand investigation." By noon, the county froze the HOA's accounts pending review. Fines piled up, and resignation letters started flying faster than lake wind. I sat on my porch that evening, coffee steaming in my hand, watching the sun dip below my lake. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel anger, just quiet satisfaction. Claudia had built her power on water. I'd just pulled the plug. A week later, the lake was quiet again. No patrol boats, no HOA notices flapping on mailboxes. Just the soft slap of water against the dock and the whistle of wind through the pines. Claudia had lawyered up, but even her attorney looked exhausted defending the indefensible. The county revoked the HOA's authority to manage the lake, citing fraud and unauthorized construction. Half the board resigned. The rest called to apologize. I didn't gloat. I offered something better. Every homeowner received a letter from me, not a threat, not a bill, but a choice. They could remove their docks or lease them for $1 a year. No fines, no vengeance, just peace. Most signed immediately. A few added handwritten thank yous. Even Ron, the neighbor who'd believed every rumor, showed up with a six-pack and an apology. By the end of summer, the lake looked the same. but the air felt different. No more fear, no more hierarchy. Just neighbors waving from docks they finally understood weren't symbols of power, but of balance. Claudia's mansion went up for sale the following month. The listing read, "Lake access available upon owner's approval." Funny thing about control, once you stop chasing it, you finally have it. They stormed in demanding my lake, waving rules and threats like weapons. But they forgot the simplest rule of all. You can't control what you don't own. When the dust settled, they learned that real power isn't about domination. It's about knowing where your boundaries truly lie. If you've ever faced HOA bullies or neighbors who think they own the world, remember, paperwork beats politics every time. Drop your HOA horror story in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe for more real homeowner justice stories. Because next time, the lake might be yours,